Hello class, this is Professor Morrison, and this is your presentation regarding the writing process. These are the four major steps in the writing process, although they can be split up into many other steps as well. The first step is pre-writing, and this is when you discover what point it is you're trying to make in whatever you are writing. The next general step is developing support for this point that you're trying to make. Then you would write a first draft and then revise and also edit. I'm going to go over these steps in more detail in the next slides. The first step in the writing process is pre-writing, and you begin doing this as soon as you start thinking about what your topic is, before you even start to type or write a single word. In addition, please keep in mind that every writer, no matter how advanced you think this person is, follows the writing process. Nobody, and I mean nobody, sits down and writes a great first draft and calls it a day. I wish that were true, but it is not. And when people tell me they think that they are not good writers, most of the time it's because they haven't given themselves a chance to follow the writing process. They probably are good writers, they just haven't been following this process. So please keep in mind that we must follow all of these steps every time we sit down to write something. And you will be turning in your pre-writing and your organization in this class, so you absolutely must do it. So for pre-writing, it will look a lot different depending on who you are, the different types of pre-writing that you choose to do, but you still have to have done something. Some of the forms of pre-writing are free writing, where we time ourselves and we just do a word vomit and get everything onto the page or the screen that we know about a subject, and then we pick through and we find the details we like later after the timer goes off. Another method is questioning, where we could ask ourselves who, what, where, when, why, and how. Or if it's a narrative, we might want to ask ourselves about descriptive details. What did it look like? What did it sound like? We can make lists. We could do cluster maps. Remember, bubble.us is a wonderful place to go to make a free mind map. And then after you have all of your details out on the page, that's when you would organize them and prepare a scratch outline. Here is an example of free writing. It's just the beginning of someone's free writing, as you can see with the little dots at the end. That is an ellipsis, and that means this continues on after, the little snippet on the slide. So you write nonstop for typically 10 minutes, although sometimes people feel more comfortable with 15, and you jot down everything that comes to mind about your topic. This person was asked to write about things that they get annoyed by. And so they said, well, there are lots of things I get annoyed by. One of them is politicians. In fact, I am so annoyed by them, the last thing I want is to write about them. Another thing that bothers me is noisy people at the movies. I used to love the movies. And you can see that politicians is misspelled, and we also have a comma splice. Do we care? No, no one is ever going to see this. This is your free writing. You've got a long way to go before you can get to a rough draft. Here we see again politicians misspelled. We don't care. This is not something we're turning in. In Shitty First Drafts by Anne Lamott, she mentions that she allows herself to do a child's draft, a first draft that no one else will ever see. And this is very freeing, very liberating. Give yourself permission to just write down all of the things you know about something. You're not going to show this to anyone. Well, except for when you turn in your pre-writing to me, you will want to have a version of your pre-writing that you do turn in. But it's probably not going to be the very first pre-writing that you do. It'll probably be maybe the second or the third. Questioning means you're going to make sure that you're asking yourself questions about your subject so that you answer all of them and you get as many details as possible to form a pool of information that you draw from and organize to form into something that might soon become your first draft. You could also make a list, which is also called brainstorming. And you could just do little dashes and write your thoughts and make a list. Don't worry about the order that they're in yet, because you will change them around and decide which ones to keep later. We're not at that point yet. Right now, we just want to generate information onto our page or screen. So this person here is still talking about the movies, and so why is this person annoyed about the movies? Well, traffic is bad between my house and the theater. They're noisy patrons. Don't want to run into Jeremy. Hard to be on a diet. We don't know who Jeremy is, but the person writing this does. They know what they mean. Pre-writing is for you. Clustering is also known as diagramming or mapping or mind mapping. This is when you write your subject in the middle of the paper, you draw a shape around it, and then you draw lines and other shapes stemming from this central idea to show the relationships between the ideas and details. I'll show you an example on the next slide. This is a really good example of a cluster diagram mind map on the same subject of why this person finds going to the movies annoying. So you notice that movies is in the middle of the page, right here. And it's everything stems out from it. We connect it, the reasons why this person doesn't want to go to the movies anymore. Might see the old boyfriend, well, that's Jeremy, apparently. The noisy people, and we can see this person thought, well, what kinds of noisy people? Teenagers, adults. What do teenagers do? They yell, they text. What do adults do? They cough and sneeze, they tell the plot. And then what is another thing that's upsetting about going to the movies? Well, the temptations. Well, what kind of temptations? Chocolate bars and popcorn. And there's too many people. Where are there too many people? In traffic and at the line. So we can see how a lot of this is just stemming from the fact that this person finds movies to be annoying. And we're organizing while we are pre-writing, which is a really good start too. Once you have the details that you think you need in order to write your assignment, then you need to start thinking about what order you're going to put them in. And that's when you prepare a scratch outline. So you want to know, what is your main idea? What point are you making? What is your evidence to support your point? And what details support that evidence? And then what order do you want those to be in, depending on what you're writing? That's what the outline helps with. After you write an outline, that's when you're ready to write a first draft. And what you want to make sure of in your draft is that your main idea is stated clearly and you have many specific details to support your points. You want it to be, if not, super polished, you're not there yet. You want it to be just at the point where it's good enough to get some feedback on what you have written. Normally, after you do a first draft, we have peer review. After that peer review, then you will begin revision. It's really nice to be able to take a short break from what you've written, and peer review lets you do that because then you can look at other people's papers while they look at yours. And then when you go to revise, you're seeing your draft again with new eyes. You have some comments from other students. Maybe you've even seen a tutor. And then you can either work from the screen or from your handwriting or from a printed page, which can feel very different from looking at a screen. Read your draft aloud because We look at these errors so many times that our eyes start to skip them, and maybe our ears will find something that our eyes didn't, and then make notes and make changes. Once you've decided what changes you really think are important to make, start looking closely at how you're going to make those changes. What content do you need to add or subtract in order to make your points clear? How can you make your sentences flow better? And very last, because you only want to edit what you're going to keep, look at your editing and proofreading. When you're revising your content, it's really important to make sure that your paper has unity. You have one main idea. It's in the last sentence of your introduction paragraph in your thesis statement, and every single supporting point points back to this one single main idea. In your standard 5-paragraph essay format, there are 3 separate points to support your main idea. They're located at the very end of the thesis statement and called your plan of development. Each body paragraph in a 5-paragraph essay would then be devoted to one of these 3 separate points. As we move forward and away from just 5 paragraphs, you may have 2 or even more body paragraphs in each body section, but they're all focusing on these 3 separate points. And in those paragraphs is plenty of specific evidence. When revising content, it's important to also focus on organization. Make sure you have your introduction, your conclusion, a title that hooks the reader. We've got transitions and connecting words showing how our ideas are related. As a writer, our job is to get the reader to want to read what we've written, to read straight through without stopping or wondering what they've read, and to keep thinking about what they've read after they're done in a positive way. One way to keep them reading without stopping and wondering what they've read is to use parallelism to balance our words and ideas. We want to stay in a consistent verb tense and point of view. So here we have an incorrect example. The mugger jumped out and scares her. Something's happening in the past and now it's happening now, and our reader just had to stop reading, read this again, and wonder what's happening. A really easy way to fix this is to make sure that both of our verbs are in past tense. The mugger jumped out and scared her. Now the reader will keep reading and understand what we wrote. Here are some more examples of keeping our voice and tense consistent. So here we have an incorrect passage. Jean punched down the risen yeast dough in the bowl. Then you dump it onto the floured work table and knead it into a smooth, shiny ball. At this point, I'm the reader and I'm thinking, why do I have to do it? This is Jean's bread. I'm not baking bread today. That was Monday. So we want to make sure we're not using the word you when we're writing, unless we're writing process analysis. That is the only time we are ever allowed to use you outside of a quoted text. When we're speaking and we use you, we understand that it means anyone or everyone. But writing is a little bit more formal than speaking. When we use you and we're writing, we're saying, hey, reader, you need to do this. And the reader doesn't like that at all, unless it's a how-to or a process. We don't want to alienate our readers, so we will stop using you. Let's fix this passage. Jean punched down the risen yeast dough in the bowl. Then she dumped it onto the floured work table and kneaded it into a smooth, shiny ball. Now we see that there is a period at the end of this sentence and everything matches the past tense and it's in third person, which does not alienate our reader. When revising sentences, it's always important to focus on using active verbs that really make the reader feel like they're part of what's going on. Passive voice is not as engaging for the reader. It's more for something formal and stuffy, like a really dry, like peer-reviewed medical journal article, not for something we'd be writing in this class. So instead of saying, the car was crashed by me, we wouldn't talk like that. We wouldn't write like that either. We would say, I crashed the car. And when we're writing, we want to make sure that we're looking for every time that we use a form of to be, is it appropriate? Should we be using it? Should it be active instead? When we're revising sentences, we really need to avoid slang, cliches, pretentious language, and wordiness. Now, we are kind of like right in the middle of the formality scale. We're not too informal and we're not too formal. Slang is very informal. We would not use it. Pretentious language is very formal. We would not use it. We want to be right in the middle with accessible, clear language that our audience can understand. Cliches have really passed their time. They're things like bad to the bone or sick as a dog, and they don't really mean anything. Instead, we would use original comparisons or just clear language. Wordiness is not good either because our reader will get bored. The worst wordiness you could ever do would be to say something like, this essay is about, or in this essay I will explain. Kittens will cry if you do this. Sometimes students are so afraid of making a run-on sentence that they make all of their sentences short and choppy. This is not good either. We really want to make sure that our sentences read smoothly and fluidly for the reader. So here we have the incorrect examples. The truck was speeding. The truck was brown. The truck skidded on some ice. The truck almost hit a police officer. The police officer was startled. The police officer was young. Oh my goodness, that was painful. How about instead we say the brown speeding truck startled the young police officer as it skidded on some ice and almost hit him. That's engaging. Finally, when you have said everything you want to say, how you want to say it, that is when you edit, because you only edit what you want to keep. And you would look for errors in grammar, punctuation, usage, and spelling. Use tools, electronic tools that are available to you for free. Technology is your friend when it works correctly. Take advantage of it. But also know it will never catch every error. That's up to you. Read things out loud. Read in a reverse sentence order out loud to find every run-on and fragment. Have a friend read it too. But the tools are a good place to start, and I do suggest that you use them, but also please proofread yourself as well. So this has been the presentation on the writing process. Please let me know if you have any questions.